buenos días. En nombre de PromPerú y los gremios relacionados con el sector textil, le dan la cordial bienvenida esta mañana, que es nuestra tercera bloque del Fórum de Innovación. Hoy día vamos a tener 3 disertaciones y vamos a empezar con la presentación de la alpaca en el mercado japonés, cuya expositora es la señorita Ayako Yoshida, que viene del Japón. Ella es experimentada en las empresas de fabricación de prendas de vestir con sede en Hong Kong y China, Vietnam y otros países del Asia. Principales clientes: Uniqlo, Shimamukura, Muji. Inició su propio negocio en importación de productos relacionados con la alpaca desde el Perú desde el año 2012. Ahora promueve el comercio justo, la moda ética y la ecología en Japón. Démosle una cordial bienvenida y con un fuerte aplauso a la señora Ayako. Aquellos que necesiten, porque va a ser en inglés, si necesitan la traductora, ahí tienen los audífonos afuera. Adelante.
Gracias. Hola. Okay. Buenos días. Good morning, everyone. My name is Ayako Yoshida. I came from Japan 3 days ago. And now this time, I'm going to talk about how is the market in Japan, mainly. But before that, I want to explain a little bit what I'm doing. So first of all, I'm going to talk about a little bit of my background, and then the trend of the garment and accessories made in alpaca or other natural fibers in Japanese market. And also, I'm not sure today how many people working for the apparel manufacturing itself, but I will talk a little bit about from where normally Japanese companies are importing products from. And I'm gonna tell you about the key trade aspects, what kind of thing is important for a Japanese company to start working with. And the end, a little bit of question and answer. Okay. Then now, this is my brand homepage. The name is Maite, and our customer is around 30, 40 years old woman mainly, and they are conscious of using good materials, and also they like to hear what's the story behind the product. And because the alpaca has this kind of the characteristic of the keeping the warmth. And Japan is very also cold, so like our customers also like care about the health. Like it's important to keep our body warm enough, these kind of things. And then my product is basically mainly the cardigans and also socks and scarves. And we also have like leg warmers. It's like the picture in the top. And we also have some alpaca dolls. And we sell mainly in the online store, our own online store. And also we do some pop-up, like temporary store in the department store. And we also sell some wholesales to some boutique, small stores. And also some catalog shopping companies. And originally, when I was a student, which is about 10 years ago, actually I look young, but I was a student like 10 years ago, and I was interested in different cultures in the world. And then I was studying like cultural studies, and then I started to find that this, I'm not sure if you know about well, but kind of fair trade and ethical fashion and ethical products. Then I met one group in working in Calavaio, and there's one Japanese old lady working with about 10 senioras there, and she taught how to knit and also how to knit very clean for Japan market, and they are still there working. It's about 10 people group. So since I met them, I came to know about alpaca and also knitting history here in Peru. And then after that, I started to work in fashion industry because I wanted to know more about how products are made in in the world. And then I was working for kind of like a global company manufacturing in China or other Asian countries. Then I worked for some like Japanese brand. They are all kind of Uniqlo, Shimamura, Muji. Maybe they are not familiar for you, but they are kind of the biggest companies in Japan. So I was kind of working for their production, mainly in the woven garments and some knit garments. And then 2012, I started my own company, and I left the mass production, and then I started to look for opportunity more with alpaca products. Now I'm gonna start talking about this, how Japanese customers are in this daily life, and also in terms of fashion, what kind of clothes they are wearing. And in Japan, first of all, the cashmere is very, very popular. The cashmere is very popular in the world, but in Japan, very, very much. And why? Because of its softness. Later I'm going to talk a little bit more, but the softness is very important for Asian market, and also especially for Japan. And also the cashmere is popular because of the branding, because when we hear about cashmere, we imagine it's good quality, it's expensive, it's very expensive and high value there. Then there are varieties of the cashmere products in the market, like from very reasonable price till like very, very expensive price. It's very wide price range. So it's kind of a common material for young people also, but also like a very kind of like people who knows who wear high brand clothing. They of course love cashmere. Then how about the alpaca in Japan? Then this is maybe a little bit difficult to see. The letter is very small. I'm sorry about it. And this is, for example, I want to show the left side of the graph. That's popularity per material. And many people know about wool. That the above one is wool. Then cashmere, the second. Then mohair, camel, alpaca, llama, vicuña. And then wool is very common materials for sportswear and also knit garments and for many, many products. And then cashmere is, of course, popular, as I said. And then many people know about mohair. But then camel alpaca is, compared to other animal fibers, still like people know about alpaca, not so many. Then this one deciding factor, the right side, is the deciding factors, what kind of point is important for customers to choose the garment. Then the first one is garment, the design itself, and the second one is the certification. In Japan, we want to have the proof if this material is which material. And sometimes it could happen like in the kind of known big apparel companies was showing this product is made of cashmere, for example, but then it ended up like the third company random checked of the material, and it found out that it wasn't cashmere, or it was like combined with other material, these kind of things. So we also care about if the material is really truth or not. And then the third one is characteristic of the material, and then origin, where it comes from, and also what kind of special story behind. And then the lower part, this is popularity per age. And so people who are over 60s and 50 to 60 years old and 40, under 40. And this is for women, this is for men. So older people, older generation know about alpaca, but still not much for the younger age people. Then if I did the Googling and how people are checking with cashmere, or what people are Googling with alpaca or merino wool. And this is very interesting because when people Google the search something with cashmere, they are finding the brand name. And it normally connects to kind of luxury or like very classic traditional companies and brands. And merino wool, this is the lower one. Merino wool, it connects to mainly like sportswear brand or outdoor wear brand. And what happens to alpaca? And it appears like alpaca farm in Japan, and also like some game things. It's not related to clothing or fashion. And so like people know about alpaca animal, but still many people don't know that it kind of used for clothing. So, but the people checking the word alpaca is more than people checking cashmere or merino wool. That's the interesting part. And then this is what kind of point the customers in Japan consider important. And this 62.7%, this is the most important factor for Japanese customers. It's the hand feel, the softness, smoothness. If it's not itchy, or if it's kind of like smooth enough, if nothing feels strange or weird. So the hand feel is most important. And the others, like high at the top part, they are kind of category of design. It's about design and colors and patterns and fitting, the silhouette. And then also we check like function and also like safety and how strong enough, not easy to get broken or this kind of things. So the softness is very important, and also function and durability. Durability, when I say durability, it includes kind of like how to take care of these clothes. Can I wash in the laundry? If not, how? And do I have to bring to dry cleaning every time, because it's going to be expensive? So it's going to be the factor if the customer decide to buy or not. If like more easier to take care, it's like easier for customers to choose the product. Then about a little bit more about this when it comes to design and colors and silhouette in Japan. There's big difference compared to, for example, Europe or United States. We like kind of focus on the small details rather than very big eye-catchy something accent or like flashy design or decorative things. We like something very kind of like small. For example, this one has a little bit of a string here. It's not very obvious, but just a little bit different. like a small point. And also like we like when it comes to the colors, we like very much basic colors like gray, navy, beige, and black. And it look it maybe for some countries it look very boring, but in Japan we really wear very basic colors. And um, but of course, in the shop, if you see only the dark colors, basic colors, it's boring. So we want to see some different kind of pop colors or something with orange or yellow or blue, light blue. But many customers end up buying the basic color, especially gray. And gray, including light gray, dark gray, many different tones. I really like gray color very much. So and no vivid color, and then it's like very like pop color also. Um, Very strong kind of yeah, vivid color is not so popular in Japan. And then when it comes to the silhouette design, we don't wear very like obvious kind of tight clothing. We don't want to show the line of the body, but we still want to look slim or like look very fine fit. We don't want to, of course, be look kind of like big or something, but we don't show the body line. And that's, I think, it's same in other Asian countries also. Yeah, it's like this. And then, so this is the basically about Japan customers are thinking. And then when it comes to alpaca, I want you all to, when you need to promote alpaca, and then we want to know what's the what kind of specific value from that material, because there are many in the market. There are many different kind of materials, not only natural fibers, including some synthetic functional fibers. There are so many selection. So why we need to choose alpaca? We want to hear that reason from you. And is it like a gentle to sensitive skin, and also like for example appropriate for cold hands and feet? How can you prove compared to other fibers like with cashmere, wool? Is it really alpaca has stronger function for this? And we need to know with some certificate or figure or something to prove that it's true. And also the important thing is how light the garment or scarves or whatever it is, because we don't want to wear something heavy. We like very lightweight. Lightweight but warm, and that's very important. And also, as I told before, like need easy care and durability. And as I said, we will be how can I say? We will trust with if it comes with like certificate or statistics, and if not, no matter how you explain, we are not fully convinced. That's the kind of a characteristic in Japan. And Japanese fashion market is kind of getting tough, and there are many affordable high quality clothing also, and but there is still a chance for alpaca, I'm believing, because still not many people know about it, and also many people from other countries are visiting Japan nowadays, especially from other Asian countries, and then they like shopping in Japan. So not only Japanese, more Asian people are also doing shopping in Japan. And then this is a little bit about this production. The products we can find in Japan are mainly made in Asia. China, Vietnam, Indonesia, Bangladesh. And of course we all import also from other area like United States, Europe, but mainly Asia because of the cost benefit, distance, and you may think that the quality, the quality of the products made in Asia is low or poor quality, not very high quality. But nowadays they are changing, improving a lot, and especially because Japanese technicians are also traveling a lot. And for Japanese company also it's easy to travel to Asian countries. So we do lots of traveling and improvement and kind of frequent chance to communicate directly and everything. So and then it's so obvious that the Japan is this red small one. So Asian countries are much closer than Peru is over there. It's totally like opposite side of the world. So there is very big merit to produce in Asia for Japan. As I said, yeah, then their quality is getting very improving. And there is cost merit. Yes. So when we want to work with Peru, we want to know why and why we should work with Peru or with alpaca, for example. And nowadays, I can also find some products using alpaca made in China or made in other countries. So like they can produce products with alpaca. So why we have to like import from Peru, and what's the specialty of your company or your country? That kind of information is very important. And if you have a chance to work with Japanese company, I want to I want you to keep this point in mind. Like we value a lot, kind of like quick response and action. Even though when you don't know the answer or how to respond, we want to know that if you read this email, for example, or if you are trying to find out information or this kind of thing. So just being quiet, no response because you don't know the answer, it's not very nice action. Like we want to get the feedback or action. What's happening now? These kind of things, even though you don't have the conclusion yet. And then when it comes to this production, the delivery schedule is also important, of course, and then high attention in quality. The customers in Japan really care much more than other customers in Europe or the United States. I know that it's too much sometimes, but we are very picky, and we even check the inside of the clothing. So, like kind of high attention in quality is kind of important. So there are many difficult things, difficult aspects for Japan. At the same time, there's still high potential, and especially because these other Asian markets are near and people come into Japan also. And so I'm believing that there's still kind of like a big chance to bring more business between Peru and Japan, and especially alpaca. So if anything, if you have interest or like trying to find the market, and please don't give up. And that's all from me. If you have any question, please ask anything if I can answer. Is there anyone, if you... Un momento, por favor. Sí, sí.
Tenemos una ronda de preguntas. Una persona se va a acercar con un micro y gustosamente Ayako le va a atender.
Good morning. Me gustaría preguntar respecto al qué tanto ustedes consideran importante el tamaño de una empresa para entrar al mercado japonés. ¿Ustedes realmente se fijan en si es que es una compañía de grande, antigua, o es que ustedes dan facilidades también para compañías como MIPES, que muchas veces tienen las capacidades de producción un tanto cortas, pero que al mismo tiempo son buenas? Quisiera saber si es que están abiertos a esa brecha para las MIPES con los tamaños de producción más pequeños?
Thank you very much. And yes, and the answer is yes. And then there are many companies in Japan, these big ones and also middle one and small one. There are many small companies now. And of course, the big companies, they require you the quantity, more than, I don't know, more than 100,000 pieces per month, or this kind of huge quantity. But nowadays, Japan also has more varieties. So small companies are also there, and their production scale is smaller. So it's the production capacity, even if you're a small company or factory, it is still, of course, the chance to work with. And then when it comes to the company profile or history, of course, if you have history and how long, how many years you're working for this product or this industry, or all this information will help you to start working with Japanese companies. But even though if you are new and you have the strong point and characteristic, or what kind of new things you're trying to do, or the big ideas, then they may start working with you. So it's of both sides. Even the small companies, there is chance. And then difficulty would be like the language. But if you can speak, not all Japanese speak English. In Spanish, much less people speak. So at least if you can speak English to communicate, and that will help a lot. If not, it's very, very difficult. When they have to find someone agent to as a middleman, and it becomes more difficult. So I think if you can speak English to communicate, then that will be, no matter what size is, there's chance. Is this okay? This okay?
Yo quiero preguntar a la expositora, dentro de la experiencia que tiene ya trabajando e investigando con el tema de alpaca en Japón, quisiera saber la preferencia que hay entre los productos hechos en forma artesanal a mano y entre los que son hechos por la industria, hechos a máquina. ¿Cuál es, digamos, la diferencia, la preferencia y el valor que le dan?
Sorry, I might miss first question. The question is how we value the handicraft and the industrial. Is this the question? Okay. Sorry. And we have both market. There are some customers who value a lot handicraft, and of course other customers, they value more industrial, and we have both chances. But when it comes to handicraft, if it's handicraft, very handicraft, probably now it's getting more difficult, and because nowadays many customers also making by themselves, like DIY, and they also make by themselves. Then so it's still handicraft, but it's something very unique or taking lots of time or some specialty there, then we value a lot. But just because of handicraft cannot be, how can I say? It might be difficult, but we need to see the specialty of this handicraft. It is okay?
Buenos días. Buenos días. Mi pregunta es con referente, ¿cuáles son las prendas que más les agrada, ¿no? Específicamente a las damas. Gracias.
The types of clothing,
Yes, yes.
like the clothing, maybe in Japan, cardigan is the most popular. This kind of a I would say cardigan is the most popular because there is very much like temperature difference inside of the place and outside. Then it's easy to like wait and take it out and this kind of thing. So very like light, it's easy to carry, and cardigan is popular.
Of a Peruvian company that Japanese clients are pondering, because you only stated story, but what kind of story? What are the relevant information within that story that Japan is considering important for trading with Peru?
And story can be anything, can be like an innovative story or something very what happened if we buy this product from you. This will it's like a kind of the fair trade or ethical production, like how this is how this affect your country or people in reality, or this kind of, it could be like this kind of story, but also it could be anything like I don't know, like innovative new project in your country, or yeah, can be anything, like more you can tell about your product and also in your production side, that will help. Is this
Buenos días. Yo tengo la inquietud de las mujeres emprendedoras en el Perú y buenos días. Yo quiero, a nombre de las mujeres emprendedoras en el Perú, saber cómo es que han incursionado en cuanto a la artesanía. Sabemos que el Japón ha empezado con la producción manual y luego con la innovación y la tecnología han avanzado, y quiero específicamente saber cómo podemos hacer nosotros para poder volcar nuestros usos y costumbres mediante la cerámica al frío, porque sabemos que Japón nos manda todos los decorativos y demás ya industrializado. Es mi inquietud. Quisiéramos nosotros innovar en la cerámica al frío, saliendo del tema quizá. Gracias.
I'm not sure how to answer, but how can I say? Yes, there is kind of like everything advanced and technological things in Japan, but also we still like the something made by hand, by people and things. So how can I say? Yeah, with something, I don't know, I cannot say exact idea, but yeah, there's something still innovative idea using the handicraft, using the people's hand and things. It still can.
En la última pregunta, la doctora Ayako igual va a estar en la parte posterior para preguntas que ustedes necesiten. Así no podemos atrasar también la segunda presentación que tenemos de Grace. Gracias.
Gracias pregunta especialmente al poner el mapa en el cual muestras la exportación desde Perú de la alpaca. En este mundo globalizado que tenemos, me pregunto, ¿ya en Japón se están usando algún tipo de insumo proveniente quizás de China o de otro lado? Obviamente no reemplazará a la alpaca, pero ¿puede ser como una competencia a la alpaca en el mercado japonés? Gracias.
Any other country can produce products with alpaca. Huh? Uh-huh. 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 Mhm. Yes, yes, I think. All the products, we can find, like any country can produce, if they can source the material, they can produce, right? And I don't still find many things 100% alpaca. It's always kind of blended, but blended for price, blended for design, or not only for the cost things. They blend it because to make it more like a fashionable design or something. But I don't still find many things with 100% in, how can I say, the products made in other country apart from Peru. But then it could be, like they might start producing that also in the future, so we don't know. And it's going to be like the same, right? Competition in the world, all the countries can do it. So the difference is how you can convince your customers how important it is to produce, because alpaca is originally from the South America, right? From Peru, Bolivia. So like why this is important to be aware of that, for example. Maybe that will also change some customers' decisions. Is it? How can I say? Yeah, there is competition. Then the competition is there, but how to fight in there, and then not by price, of course, because its distance is huge and things. The cost is very different. So what else can you add the value there, using as your this background, everything, this precious material from here. And also, I think handicraft, as you said before, because many things we can find from other countries, they are industrial machines because it's cheaper, right? So yeah, and they also do some handicraft, but not much. They are industrial. So how can you make, for example, handicraft more variable? That's kind of things that we have to think. I'm also thinking that, but also like you need to think, you need to help, like how to value that part.
Agradecemos a Yako, el cual pedimos un fuerte aplauso para ella por su excelente presentación.
Gracias. Okay.
A continuación, invitamos a Lant de Italia. Bueno, nuestra siguiente ponente, Lant de Italia, es una diseñadora inglesa, nacida y criada en Hong Kong. Ella tiene un MBA en diseño de modas con Knitwear en Central Science Mart y ahora está asistiendo a los maestros de diseño de género de punto creativos en la Academia COS de Moda en Italia. Por favor, invitamos acá. Su presentación será de la fibra al diseño, mi experiencia personal con alpaca. Un fuerte aplauso para ella, por favor.
Gracias.
Hi, my name's Grace Lant. Sorry, Laura. Sorry, 1 second. My name's Grace Lant. I'm currently studying in Italy, and my presentation is talking about alpaca from a beginner's point of view. This is the first time I've ever used alpaca. Gracias. And this is the first time I've used alpaca, and I want to explain the perceptions of alpaca in Europe through my collection. So I'm English, as they said. I studied at Central St. Martin's in London. I don't know if you know it, but it's quite famous for fashion design. I then had some work experience with Alexander McQueen, and then now I'm in Italy. So when I was 14, I decided I want to help people, and I came up with a crazy idea that becoming successful and would then give me the ability to make a positive effect on people's lives. So I was always good at art, I was always good at textiles, I was always interested in fashion. That is the main reason I chose it. I moved to London when I was 18, and that's where I discovered knitwear. My tutor recommended it for me, and it really fit with my design creativity. And I started my BA in knitwear, and anyone that is a designer or knows anything about knitwear knows that there's so much to think about when you're designing. There's so many yarns to use, there's so many techniques you can use, and sorry, I don't know what's happening. There's so many techniques you can use, and it takes a long time to learn it. And this is what I did at St. Martin's. And St. Martin's is somewhere where it doesn't teach you the technicalities, it teaches you to be creative. It doesn't make you think, what are you actually using? It just says, use whatever you want. If it looks good, then it's cool and it's fun. And that is important with design. But, you know, I was lacking something when I was there. I went to Alexander McQueen, and for the first time I went to Pitti Filati. It's where I discovered Italian yarns. It's where I discovered how many different yarns you could use. And I really learned how the fashion world worked as a business, and that was really important for me. And then after Alexander McQueen, I went back to St. Martin's and I did my final BA collection. It was only this time last year that I graduated, so I was making this collection this time last year, and it was based on the tradition of football in England. But the most important thing to know about this collection is that everything was made from wool and cashmere. And I got to the end of it, and everyone was really happy with the way it looked, and it got a lot of press, and it was great, but I wasn't really happy, because when I was making it, I just threw stuff together. You know, however it worked, I didn't think about it. I was like, oh, I'm going to shove it in the washing machine, I'm going to print on top of it, hope for the best. And I really knew when I graduated, I wanted to understand the material I was using and really push it to its full potential. So that's how I ended up in Italy. CKD Masters, Creative Knitwear Design Masters, is a really special and unique course to Italy. There's a lot of partners within the textiles business that have all come together to create this Masters, and it really concentrates on knitwear, which is really important for alpaca, as you all know. The first month of this course, we visited 20 to 30 companies around Italy, factories that produced yarn, factories that made the garments, and other factories that specialized in printing and embellishment, and we really got to understand how the production process worked. Most importantly from this, we visited Zegna Barufa, a top company for wool in Italy, probably one of the biggest yarn companies in the whole world. And while we were there, we saw their factories and we learnt how wool was made. We learnt from the sheep until the final yarn, you know, the top selection, carding, spinning, dyeing, washing, blending. We learnt everything. And it's relatable to alpaca. And so I had that in mind when I was designing the collection. So the second month in, Mitchell came to our university and they gave us a crash course in alpaca. We had one day with Mitchell telling us everything we needed to know about alpaca. They told us about the different breeds. They told us, you know, there's baby alpaca, FS alpaca, coarse alpaca, depending on the fleece, and the area of the fleece you take it from. We learned all about all the natural colors, the blends with alpaca. And when I say until this day, I had never even realized that alpaca was a yarn. That's true. It was never, I spent 5 years learning knitwear in London. I'd worked with Alexander McQueen. I had been to Pitti Filati and visited all of these massive companies, and I had never come across alpaca as a yarn. Maybe here or there in blends, but nothing major. And really, I had no idea how special it was until that day Mitchell came and told us about it. And actually, to me, the most important thing as a designer was its ethical values. Because, you know, all types of yarn in this day, there's so much technology that makes it special, makes it softer, makes it finer. But it's where it comes from that's so important, and that's why I think alpaca is so special. You know, it's special to Peru, it's special to the heritage that the Incas use. With Mitchell's help, these farmers are becoming more and more educated, and it's environmentally friendly, which is so important in fashion today. And going back to why I started fashion, I always wanted to help and I always wanted to make an impact on the world through fashion, and this is really the first opportunity I've had to do that. So then, after Mitchell came, we got the project brief. And as I said, there's a lot of important people working on this. So it was a competition. There was Laura Laswadi, from the head creative of Maximara, Mitchell Group, and also the Peruvian government and Alpaca Peru. They all came together to come up with this competition. Laura Laswadi was the project tutor for this competition. She was the one that was directing us creatively. She has such a love for alpaca. Like, she was so enthusiastic about it when she was talking to us. She's been to Peru, she's been to Peru Moda, she's been to Arequipa, and she's a great promoter of alpaca through Maximara as a brand. But she was challenging us to show alpaca in a new way, to really push its versatility. There was a theme to the project, which was generation, meaning she wanted the collection that we came up with to be able to be worn by all ages. That's also something Maximara concentrates on. And it was just a small collection, a capsule of 6 looks. Okay, so now I want to talk about my design process with alpaca. So I knew from the start I wanted to show off alpaca. Bearing in mind that I had never used it before, this was a big challenge, as every yarn is so different. But I started my research looking at the idea of family business. This is something that was really new to me when I came to Italy, but after visiting all of the factories, Found it really fascinating. And there's a theme of the younger generation taking over from the older generation and modernizing the business while keeping its traditions and heritage. And I think this is something that's really relatable to the alpaca business today. There's a need of modernization and everyone's working towards that. And I applied this concept to clothes. I took the traditional farmer jacket and I changed it. I took the traditional wrap dress and I changed it. And the first textiles, I went with what works best for alpaca and how it's most commonly used, which is for more masculine and heavy. I used the natural browns, and I also used Mitchell's yarn. It's a nylon that's air blown with FS alpaca and a wool blend inside. And it's really chunky, so it allows for a lot of volume, but it's still light. And then I did a second textiles, and this one is the most unusual for alpaca. It was very feminine, light, drapey, it was transparent. I used it on a 12 gauge, which is quite uncommon. And I also used it in combination with a nylon yarn. I printed on it, and I used bright colors, so it really goes against like all of the commonly thought of aspects of alpaca. And the third textiles, I wanted to do something that was true to alpaca, that, you know, in these garments, alpaca was the hero. So I used Mitchell's 100% baby alpaca yarn in natural colors and blends of whites and grays. And I used classical knit stitches. I just had ribs. This is one of the pieces that I'm wearing now. Just very traditional, but still showing that traditional can be used in a modern, fashionable way. So this was my design proposal of each garment, and in this collection, each garment had to be special in itself, and itself be a tribute to alpaca, which I think I managed to do. And also I wanted it to be able to be styled together in many different ways. And this is my design proposal of 6 looks. So all of the pieces styled together, so each look really showed off how different alpaca can be. So Mitchell provided us with cones of yarns to sample with. They gave us the color cards for the autumn-winter 18 season, and they gave us lots of swatches to work with. So then we start beginning to understand alpaca over fiber and how it works, what doesn't. And we worked with IMAX, which is Maximara's knitwear company, to sample. That's where I came up with the Intarsia programming. And they have the most advanced technology there, so it allowed me to do tradition mixed with really new things. And then we presented the collection. So Amora Cabajal from Peru government was there, Laura Laswadi, Bruno from Mitchell, Antonella, who's the head of the factory we were going to be working with, and Miss Diana, who's the head of our course. And a few weeks later, I found out I won, which I was so happy about. And then production began. And this is where I really learned so much. The factory I was working with is called Loma in Italy. And they produce collections for Paul Smith, John Paul Gaultier, Antonio Maris, who've worked with some massive names. But they had really not worked with alpaca before, which here and there they'd use blends. I think they had some in stock from an Agnes B collection, but you know, it was still new to them. But there was no real shock in production. They were professional. It's where I started to understand how garments are made in the real world and the importance of yarn choice when designing a knitted garment. Because previously, everything I had designed, I had made myself. So it came from my head to me making it. And I had to learn the link between me and the factory. You know, you have to consider the gauge it's knitted on, the tension it's knitted with, the stitches you're knitting, the finishings, the programming, the cost. There's so much that goes into one garment. But through this process, I was working with them every day. I was helping them make the samples. This is where I really understood alpaca and how it worked in the real world as such. And I think the nicest thing for me was I had the fitting for the collection on Monday, the final fitting, and everyone was so surprised. People that had originally thought, oh, this is never going to work, a whole alpaca collection, what are they thinking? They loved it, and they were really shocked at the results of alpaca, and for me, that's a victory. Finally, I'd just like to conclude with talking about how I found alpaca is perceived in Italy, and you know how I think the future should go. So Antonella, who's the head of Loma, the factory I used with to make this collection, we had knitted a few swatches in the baby alpaca just to test the tension, and she walked into the design office and she picked it up and she pulled such a horrible face, and she was like, why can't we use cashmere? And we had to explain to her again, you know, this is an alpaca collection, it can't be cashmere. And I think you have to understand that Italy is the capital of luxury fashion. They create the highest standard garments in the world, and they use the highest standard products. And for years and years, in the knitwear industry in Italy, they've been working with cashmere and wool. So alpaca is relatively new compared to that. And unfortunately, they compare alpaca to wool and to cashmere, and I think this is due to the process of how it's made. So when they feel alpaca and then they feel wool, there is a difference. But I think what needs to be understood in Europe is that alpaca is its own fiber. It has its own qualities, and it shouldn't be compared, it should be seen by itself. And for me, after working with it, the qualities that really make it special are the natural colors that are available, up to 25 shades. You know, they're such beautiful colors, and they're timeless, they're classic. That's really important. The second thing is the density of alpaca. Whereas most people might see this as a negative, I think it can be used in design as a massive positive, and it's something that's different from wool. And thirdly, that I've mentioned before that I think everyone should be aware of, is how it is environmentally friendly and ethical, which in a world where it's becoming increasingly more important to design, to be aware of where your products come from, this is a massive selling point for alpaca, and really it's the main reason I would choose to use it in the future with my designs. Tomorrow I'm flying to Arequipa for the day, and I'm really excited to learn more. You know, I want you to keep in mind that everything I've said today has come from a beginner's point of view. Until October, I had never used alpaca before, and I still have so much to learn. And I think companies in Europe are starting to use it. They have been for the past 10 years, and I think alpaca, the export of alpaca have increased so much because of companies like Maximara using it. But honestly, I think it needs to be integrated into fashion education at a much earlier point. Like I said, I went to St. Martin's, the top fashion school in the world, and I had never heard of alpaca. You know, in St. Martin's, in the knitwear department, we have a massive storeroom of yarn, of every fiber you can imagine to trial with, and alpaca isn't there, and it needs to be, because as designers, we only work with what we know. And unless this competition had been available to me, I really don't think I would have ever been aware of alpaca. And I'm so grateful it was, because I really, in the future, I really aim to keep using it, and I want all of my collections to include alpaca, because I really believe in the product and I really believe in the results. Thank you. If you want to see the collection, I made this PowerPoint before the collection was finished, but if you want to see it, it's outside by the Mitchell stand, so you can see everything all finished. I didn't have time to include pictures here, but I'd really love it if you could go see it. I hope you're all proud of how I used alpaca. And if there's any questions. Yeah. Okay.
First of all, how did you manage to have a collection that actually captures a wide age range? You talked about that.
Okay.
And
so
also
I actually, thank you for asking that. I missed that part out. I think when I was approaching this collection, because my BA collection was for really young people, when I was approaching it to be available for all age ranges, it came down to a styling aspect. You know, I had, first of all, my inspiration, Jacob Holt and Esko Manico, two photographers who really capture tradition and heritage within their work. They provided the perfect visual inspiration for working with alpaca in terms of the color and atmosphere. So that made it easy for me to then create different textiles that can be styled differently. And I think when it comes to being available to different age groups, you have to think of styling, because there's certain pieces that by themselves my grandma would not wear. But maybe, I don't know if you see it, there's one textile that's really transparent, but with the coat on top, it then becomes older. I think that's how I approached it with styling, yeah. Any more questions? You can ask another one if you want. Yeah? Sorry, 1 second. Could you use the microphone?
how are you planning on introducing alpaca conscious into like people's mind, even though they haven't heard of it before, like with the alpaca project, and what's like its response?
Did you say the conscience?
Yes. Like, how are you gonna like make people think alpaca it's not best at cashmere, but actually can like be as the same range and start preferring alpaca?
So I think, you know, I've put a lot of thought into this, and I think like it's what I said earlier. People need to stop comparing it. Alpaca is its own fiber. It has its own qualities. You know, the Suri alpaca can be really fine and really soft and comparable to cashmere in the touch. But it's never going to be cashmere. People need to start realizing why it's special by itself. And I think, you know, I am working with the PR team on this, and that's the approach we're taking. And for me, the biggest thing is really pushing the ethical side of it, because for consumers, this is so important at the minute. People buy things if they know it's come from a good place. If they know it's come from a special place, and if it has a story, it's worth so much more. Anything else? Yeah.
Two questions, please.
Yeah.
First of all, I wanted to, you are in the high couture fashion, right? From what I get.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Well,
so I wanted to know price range wise, how comparable is alpaca to the other materials, garments that, materials that you use?
Okay. So at the minute, I'm working with yarns from Italy, and they are the most expensive in the whole world because they're the top companies. And it's really hard to compare, because cashmere, for kilo of cashmere from Zanya Barufa, you're looking at 200 euros for a kilo, which, you know, alpaca, you can buy a kilo, you know, depends so much on the fiber, but you can buy a kilo for like 30 euros. But when it comes to high-end fashion, it's not just the original products that make the price, it's where it's produced, the factory it's produced with. For example, one of the textiles I used with the intarsia, the really fine gauge, that would cost so much to produce because of the programming and the different processes that go into it. And then, you know, obviously, even though the label is becoming less important in fashion, if you can put a label on it, it's then worth more. So, but I think in fashion now, if you made something with alpaca that was really special, it wouldn't matter that it was made from alpaca and not cashmere, because if it's special and people want to buy it, they're going to pay the same price for it. Sorry, I think, like I said, I'm a really new designer. In terms of cost and production, that's a new thing to me, so I can't answer it properly. Yeah, and your second question?
The second question was, how many alpaca providers do you actually have in Europe that are the most known?
Okay, so for knitwear, there's Pitti Filati in Florence, which is twice a year. They come in the summer, they come in February to show spring-summer yarn collections, and then they come in July to show autumn-winter collections. And this is where all designers from Europe or around the world, they come to source their yarn. And I've been to Pitti Filati 4 times now, and Inca Tops and Mitchell are the 2 main providers internationally for alpaca. I really think if anyone was consciously going to use alpaca as a yarn, they would go to either of these 2. But having said that, there are a lot of companies in Europe now. I don't know if there's a company called Linear Pew, which are really famous. They have alpaca blends. Earfil have alpaca blends. You know, all of the companies use a bit of alpaca here and there, but I think Inca and Mitchell are the only 2 that really focus on it. Yeah. You're welcome. Yeah. Thank you. All right. Thank you.
Continuando con la última presentación de esta mañana en el Fórum de Innovación, me es muy grato presentar a Calvin Inglis con el tema tendencias de marketing en las artesanías, marcas artesanas en crecimiento y por qué están recibiendo su atención. Calvin, realmente para nosotros va a ser muy grato escuchar sus experiencias y esperemos que le podamos sacar el máximo provecho con las preguntas que puedan hacerle más adelante, porque les voy a leer su currículum para que vean el tiempo que tiene dedicado al tema de las artesanías. Calvin ha marketeado productos hechos a mano desde que tenía 12 años. Su carrera temprana comenzó con el negocio detallado en madera de su familia, donde desarrolló su espíritu emprendedor y la comprensión de todas las facetas de dirigir un negocio. Un talento que lleva a cabo su consultoría de hoy. Calvin sirve como gerente nacional de ventas para varias empresas americanas que comercializan artículos hechos a mano. Él era director de comercialización de arte para George, Poca Gerencia, una compañía gerencia principal de las demostraciones de los Estados Unidos, y cofundador de Melange, una exitosa empresa de importación y venta al por mayor que ofrece productos hechos a mano de artesanos de todo el mundo. Hoy en día, como cofundador de Big Hunt, Calvin es el viajero incansable que se encuentra en todos los rincones del mundo, trabajando lado a lado con los artesanos para fortalecer sus negocios y aumentar su exportación al mercado. Recibámoslos con un caluroso, cariñoso aplauso a Colin.
Gracias. But this way? Okay. To go back. And then what, do I need to turn this on?
It's already
It's
turned
on?
and you use this. If somebody asks you in Spanish,
Okay.
it's already on.
Perfect. The last day. Has everyone had a good show? You've enjoyed being here? Well, thank you for having me, and I look forward to your questions afterwards. Today we're going to talk about trends that affect the artisan market, specifically trends that we see in the Western markets, which are the primary outlets for you. When we talk about trends, we often look to the United States and Europe for what's happening there. And the primary reason for that is that those two markets combined represent about half of the buying power in the world. So the US and Europe combined represent about 17% of our population, but they represent right at 50% of our GDP and our buying power. So what happens in those markets affects the rest of the world. And it affects not only the way that we buy throughout the world, but it also affects the demands for the products that we're producing. So what we're going to look at is we're going to look at some of those major trends that are happening and those trends that are happening that specifically affect the artisan world. When we talk about trends, we often think about things like color and pattern and texture. Well, those are trends that change really rapidly, and those are trends that are difficult for artisans to respond to a lot of times. So we're going to be looking at some of those bigger trends, those trends that move more slowly and that artisans can respond to more effectively. So we're going to be looking at the popularity of artisan product. Why is it popular today? What is happening in the market in terms of the products that are popular? And how are we seeing that expressed in different marketing programs? So interest in handmade products is stronger than we have ever seen it. And I've been working in this industry, I'm 47 years old. I've been working with handmade products since I was 10 years old with my family's company, and it's the strongest really that we've ever seen this. We believe that what we're seeing is that this artisan, the interest in artisan product is being driven by lots of different trends. Consumers aren't necessarily looking specifically for artisan products, but the things that they are looking for are inherent in the nature of artisan goods. But we're seeing it throughout the marketplace. We're seeing it in large companies such as Walmart, Nordstrom's, Anthropologie. We're seeing it in high-end designers, Vivienne Westwood. We're seeing it, obviously, at the top design school in the world, at St. Martin's. So we are seeing the interest in artisan product filter throughout the marketplace, but it's mostly driven by demands that aren't necessarily about artists, but that artisans can respond to very well. So it's important for you to understand that, so you know how to present your product in a way that the consumer is going to want to see them. So handmade products are no longer niche products. It used to be they were a very specific segment of the market, but now we're seeing them throughout our market pyramid. So we have our market pyramid of the high end, the luxury. If you're talking about fashion, here's your haute couture. And we're seeing that in our mainstream, and we're even seeing that in our mass market. People are using these words, people are seeking out these types of products throughout the marketplace, which is somewhat unusual for us to see that. So marketing is no longer about the stuff you make, but about the story you tell. And this is where artisan product fits so perfectly within the marketplace. So what is the, and you have to think about for your line, what is the story that the customer wants to hear? How does the customer want that story presented to them? Why are artisan products what they're looking for? And why do artisan products meet those needs? We use a bullseye here because there's so much happening in the world now that your marketing has to be razor sharp. It has to fit, it has to hit the center of the bullseye. Because there's so much going on around us that we want to make sure that our marketing programs are specifically targeted to the customer that you're trying to reach. So we're going to look at 6 trends, and we're going to also look at examples of how those trends are being used to appeal to buyers, so that you can maybe consider these methods and methodologies for your own artisan business. So the first one we're going to look at, authenticity, honesty, and trust. Buyers are tired of being lied to. They're tired of not being told the truth. So they are looking for stories that have and express authenticity. Transparency. They want to understand what's happening in your business and how it's happening. They want products that have impact. We're seeing what we refer to as an impact statement that's accompanying the production of, that's accompanying the sales of the product in more and more marketing plans. And an impact statement is something that tells me exactly what my purchase of that product is doing within a community. When, as a consumer, I buy that product, an impact statement is going to tell me how that money is benefiting the world or the community that made that product. So you can see how this is inherently the nature of artisan product. Artisan product benefits an individual in a community every time the product is purchased. But you have to tell me that. As a consumer, I want you to give me that impact purchase, that impact statement. I want you to tell me exactly who is benefiting. And I want you to be honest about it. If you are only helping one person, that's fine. You're helping more than most people. If you're helping a whole community, tell me. But the numbers that you present to me need to be real. They need to be real for a number of reasons. I'm not very trusting anymore because people have told me things that weren't true. The social audit today is extraordinarily high. So if you tell me that you're helping a community to support a school in Ayacucho, I have a friend who's traveling to Ayacucho next week, and I'm going to say, hey, go see this school. Tell me what's going on there. And it happens every day. So if you tell me you're doing something, make sure you're actually doing it. You don't have to have great big numbers, but the numbers have to be real when you create that impact statement. And talk to me about authenticity and honesty. And that allows us to develop a relationship of trust. We look at companies like The Citizenry. The Citizenry is primarily an online company, and they are working exclusively with handmade goods. And they are telling us up front, this is their tagline, home goods with a soul and a story. And they want to tie us directly to those communities. And they tie us directly to those communities through their images, through their text, through their language. They tell us, inspired by a trek across the Andes, textiles that highlight Peru's ancient art of weaving and incredibly soft alpaca. This is bringing us into the story. This is bringing us into the community. It's bringing us into the history of this product. And it's what allows us to have that connection that we're looking for. This trend has developed over time. And we sort of started seeing it happen if we think back about 10 years ago, when suddenly the world was in chaos. We were entering wars all over everywhere. The economy was coming down. And we were all feeling very scared. And in the US, the term that we started hearing was nesting. And nesting meant that you were literally surrounding yourself with things that made you feel comfortable. And it was because we had all of this insecurity. Well, nesting then turned into this comfort sort of feeling. And one of the trends that was described was, I want the blanket that I buy to feel like my grandma made it, because that's what gives me security and safety. So from there, we went to, well, if I want it to look handmade, why don't I make it? And you saw this weird trend happening in coffee shops all across the US and Europe of people going to coffee shops and learning how to knit. And then they realized, I don't like to knit. So then they said, well, who does knit? And this is how these handmade trends are starting to develop, is they all fall in one after the other. So now we're going to those communities that do knit because we now have an appreciation for those products again. But we want to be tied to that community. We want to know that we're not out there in the world doing harm, but we're out there in the world doing good. It's a concept that we sometimes refer to as planet positive or people positive. And people and buyers and consumers want to know how their products reflect that philosophy. And you do that, you tie them into this, you tie them into the communities by showing them who the product is benefiting and how the product is made in a very transparent way. Because they are going to check. It's amazing how small our world has become in terms of transparency and social audit. They will find out if you're not doing what you say you're doing. 91% of customers value honesty in the companies that they work with. And again, this is because we have been told things that weren't true for a long time. So the younger generations, the X generations, the Y generations, the millennials, are all looking for this sense of trust and honesty from the suppliers that they're working with. Being transparent allows you to do this. When I started in business with my family in the 90s, no one ever told you who their supplier was. Ever. They would protect their supplier to the end of the day, end of days. Now, they put that supplier forward because that supplier is the one who has the good story. That supplier is the one that ties them to the community. That supplier is the one that gives them the positive impact that consumers are looking for. So this has been a major shift in the past 20 years. So suppliers and sellers in the US, buyers, need your story. But we also have to have you tell it. Because you have to tell me the story. You have to tell me who you're working with. Otherwise, I'm not going to know. It's just going to appear to be any other product. A Boston Consulting Group survey found that we're also seeing a delineation between these generations as to how they view this, how they view brands. We heard the last speaker say, I didn't hear earlier in her presentation, but at the end of her presentation, she said, labels are becoming less important. And that's a generational shift. Baby boomers, those seniors the people that are moving into their senior years, which is one of our largest populations. Baby boomers tend to trust brands that have been around a long time. So they look to what we might call those those legacy brands, those brands that we have seen for multiple generations. They look for brands that when there's a problem, they solve it fast. They're right on top of it. They say, we just found out about this and we're going to fix it. But they go back to those brands that they've always gone to. Millennials have been more drawn to brands that have a sense of personality and support worthy causes, that they support those issues that are important to millennials. You notice here we don't talk about the generation in between. That's X generation, that's me. Nobody cares about us. We're little, we're tiny, we don't buy anything. So when we look at these brands, when we look at these big trends, we look at the boomers who drive a certain type of buying, and we look at the millennials who are driving buying. As we age, what we buy changes. So boomers as a target market right now, baby boomers as a target market right now, they're buying less and less. They're downsizing. So their significance in the market is decreasing. But as we get older, we also have a tendency to spend more money on better things. So we buy fewer things, but we're looking for better quality, and we're willing to spend more money on those products. Millennials, though, are just coming in to the bulk of their buying power. They're just starting to do things like go out on their own and get apartments and buy houses, which is when we buy a lot of stuff. So we're seeing the market shift in terms of the types of products that are appealing to these different types of groups. The boomers are looking for smaller items that typically are higher quality and higher price point, usually more accessory oriented, whereas the millennials are moving into home furnishings. They're establishing themselves in their life, so they're spending money on bigger items, and they're spending more money on setting up their houses. The Y generation, which is just entering college, is one that we want to also keep an eye on, because the Y generation is larger than the millennial generation. The Y generation is in the United States is about 1 million people larger than the millennials. And they are even more in tune with social consciousness than the millennials. So we want to tell that story with our impact story. We want to tie people to the origin of the product. Seedeye is a high-end jewelry company that specializes in African beadwork. They always are sure to tie the product that is for sale to the tradition and the community that it came from. Something important to note here is that it is evolving the design process. And this is an extremely important aspect of success in the marketplace. And this photo, I think, really illustrates why the design side is very important. Here we have this traditional piece in the top corner. Ladies, how many of you would wear that? One. More than once. But how many of you would wear this more modern version? And you would like to know that it's tied to this original. So we want to make sure that we're using that tradition to tell a story, but we also want to make sure that we're creating a marketable product to a modern audience. And again, here we have the tying in, the creating the story, and we create that story not only with words, but we create it with the visual impact to show people the history of the product and the tradition of the product and create that impact story. So purpose has become the 5th P of marketing. So you have price, product, placement, and promotion. And now we have purpose. And purpose is part of the promotion, but it also needs to be an inherent part of your business model because it is going to be audited. And this is Sedai Designs, telling us about their commitment to the Maasai women they work with. Our second trend that we look at is social and media savvy customers. I was at a presentation last week on marketing and content. We are surrounded by content. And content marketing has been a buzzword for a while. And it all started with the world in your pocket. You can find out anything, anywhere, any time of day or night. I mean, I remember growing up when you had that giant set of encyclopedias in the living room and you had to go really research something. Now it's all right here. You can sit at dinner and fact check your friends at dinner. So content marketing has become mainstream. And it allows people to access information in a way they've never been able to before. This is a group we work with in Guatemala, Corbata, and they have used content marketing and used social media to really position their company in a way that wouldn't have been possible for a small company in Guatemala even 10 years ago. So Facebook and Instagram are leading this charge. We all know there's all sorts of different types of social media out there. In general, Facebook and Instagram are still the primary resources for social media. When we look at social media and we look at where do we want to be present, do I have to be on Twitter? Do I have to be on Facebook? Do I have to be on all of these different platforms? The answer is you have to be where you have the time and energy to do it well. If you can only use one social media platform and do it well, then that's all you need. Don't take on a platform that you're not prepared to actually pay attention to. If you don't have time to use Twitter every day, don't use Twitter. Focus on the one that you have time and energy to actually do it well. In general, we find that Facebook and Instagram are the two that are most often used and most successful. Here's an example with Corbata. So Corbata is a relatively small company in Guatemala. They produce men's ties using traditional fabrics. They are always right on top of their Instagram and Facebook pages and making sure that they're posting content that is interesting for their consumer. Some of it, I'm not sure why it's so interesting. For instance, to promote their New York trade show, they posted a compressed video, 5 hours of setting up a trade show booth in 1.3 minutes. Within 2 days, they had 12,000 views of somebody standing in a trade show booth hanging ties on the wall. But people obviously were talking about it and looking at it. Video is expected to drive 85% of internet movement in the next 3 years. 85% in the next 3 years. I wasn't sure I believed that. I went to a marketing seminar last week specifically on digital content. And I was giving this same seminar an hour later. So between them, I took a video of myself, 30-second video. I'd never posted a video before in my life. 30-second video, post saying, I'm getting ready to do a seminar. Posted it on my Facebook and Instagram, and in 3 hours, I had 600 views. And I've never done it before. So video is driving people's choices. And over half, I think it's right at 51 or 52%, of video content is viewed without sound. So you need to make sure that that video content can be seen without sound or that you are captioning it. And that's going to help you participate in that world as well. And a lot of this comes down to, you know, what we've done and how we've learned and how our lives have changed. And as millennials are driving this, they are a video generation. They are a generation that grew up with a screen in front of their face. So it makes sense that that would be the type of marketing that they're looking for. And Instagram, here's the Instagram. We have 23,000 followers for Sudara. Well, let's think about that. If you have 23,000 followers, if 10% of them become customers, who would like to have 2,300 customers? Most of us. So it's all about the numbers when we start looking at these types of marketing events. And Instagram is one of probably the essential marketing tools. And we're seeing it in lots of different categories. Traditional textiles from Afghanistan, all the way down to ties from Guatemala. And different price points. Number 3, experience versus product. The other thing that we're seeing in the younger generations is that it's very important for them to actually be part of and have an experience in their shopping. As they turn away from labels, as they are becoming more socially conscious, they want to be directly engaged in what's happening around them. So we're seeing major retailers change their retail model from being a static walk into a store retail model to being some form of an engagement and an interaction. Customers' purchasing habits are showing what clinical research has shown. Experience drives happiness greater than material possessions. We all know that. You know, we remember the fantastic dinner much more than we remember the clothes that someone was wearing. So we want to try to tie those things together because we still need to sell products. In order to keep artisans employed, we still need to sell things. So we want to try to bring those things together. 72% of millennials will spend money on experiences before they will spend money on products. So, we give them the opportunity for an experience. Nisolo is a great example of this. Nisolo offers a trip to visit their artisans in Peru to one winner during their buying season. So their customers come in, they make a purchase, and they're entered to win a trip to Peru to meet, to travel in Peru, to experience the Peruvian culture, to meet the families and the artisans that make their shoes. And it again drives that traffic. West Elm. How many of you know West Elm? So West Elm is a major retailer in the United States. They are the upper end of the mainstream market. And West Elm is being led by the president and creative director for them, is very committed to artisan product. And they have been a driving force behind the mainstream acceptance of artisan product. But they are also trying to capitalize not only on the impact in the story. Here we see 47% of Haitians struggle to read and write, and this is what we are doing about it. We see 5,000 artisans are employed through the programs that they work with. But they also are trying to capitalize on the experiential side by doing things like branding hotels. So now you can go away for the weekend and live in West Elm products. You can live in the global experience that West Elm has created, in the artisan experience, the artisan aesthetic that West Elm promotes. And guess what? Everything in the room's available online. So if you like it, you can go home and buy it. You can probably buy it from your room. So they're bringing that experience. They are showing you how you can be a part of it, how you can support those artisans by having an experience. It's also interesting that West Elm has chosen to pilot this program in what we would call a secondary market. So it's not in New York. It's not in Los Angeles. It's in Savannah, Georgia. They're in smaller towns. They're still places, destination places, but they're in smaller locations so that people have a different experience than they might have somewhere else. And that's going to drive even more people to say, oh, I've never been to Savannah. Let's go to Savannah. We'll stay in the West Elm Hotel. And you're having this new experience that they're creating. Groups like Anthropology. Anthropology has always also worked with a certain number of handmade products. They are starting to promote that as a greater part of their programming. But more importantly, they are opening cafes in some of their flagship stores. So they're bringing that experience. They're saying, come be part of the Anthropology experience. Have a meal here. And it allows you to understand what is the lifestyle that Anthropology is about. Probably the first, sort of the king, we might say, of lifestyle branding is Ralph Lauren. You know, and Ralph Lauren started lifestyle branding by all of those ads of, you know, people in big sweaters and white pants and riding horses down the beach in New England. And you wanted to be that person. You said, okay, if I buy a shirt with a little horse on it, then I get to be that person. Well, this is an extension of that. This is companies working around this lifestyle brand and this lifestyle idea are demonstrating to you by having you come into their home and have a meal, having you sit there surrounded by these beautiful products that are all for sale. You are doing a lot of this as artisans. Those of you who work with artisans here in Peru, those of you who have worked with tourists, you've done this. You have people come to your facility to see. You may have women or men who say, how do you do that? How do you do a backstrap loom? And they sit down and you put a backstrap loom on them and show them. I would say probably the best that I've seen at this in Peru is Nilda Cayanalpa with the Center for Traditional Textiles in Cuzco. And when you go to their facility in Chinchero, it's like a beautiful staged presentation. And they take you through the process. And as you move through the process of spinning the wool, dyeing the wool, weaving the product, every time you move stations, you've got 4 or 5 women who get up and they go and they position themselves in such a way that it's a very nice picture for you to take home with you. Every station. And it allows me to feel part of it. I've been going to see her for 20 years and I still take pictures every time. Because it's that engaging. So having that experience helps me tie to the product. And so millennials want to have the experience, but we also want to make sure that they continue buying the product. So we have to start tying those things together. This is Noonday Collection. Noonday Collection is a jewelry company. They have a very unique experiential model. It is a direct sales company, so meaning they go out and they have home parties where, just like Tupperware, who's been to a Tupperware party? You know, it's that idea where you invite people into your home and then a salesperson comes in and they present their product. Noonday has become the largest fair trade jewelry company in the world. And they sell millions of dollars of fair trade jewelry. And the way that they are tying this experience is their salespeople, whom they refer to as ambassadors. I think they have about 1,500 ambassadors right now. Their salespeople have been to visit these communities that make their jewelry. Their salespeople are tied directly to the artisan. And then they, in turn, are out in the field meeting the consumer that's buying the product. So you have one person separating the artisan from the consumer who's going to wear that set of earrings. One person. So you are bringing that experience in. The owner of Noonday, who is running the multi-million-dollar company, is one person removed from every single consumer that wears her product. Because she knows all the ambassadors. She has told all of the ambassadors her experience, why she started the company, to help. She started the company because she adopted a child from overseas, and she wanted to do something to help the community where that child came from. Their company now has also helped 1,200 other women adopt children. And all of this ties together in that I can't necessarily go to Africa by myself and meet these people, but you did. And you're here right now talking to me about it and telling me what a difference it makes to the women that you know, that you met. So that experiential marketing is a key part of what is appealing to the younger generation. Most of Noonday's customers are from the middle of the United States, which is not an area that is often exposed to global culture. So it's also allowing people to feel part of something that is not in their homes normally, because they want to feel connected. This is the owner in the red shirt, the founder of Noonday, and here you can see she is interacting directly with the customers who are buying her products. The fourth, ethical fashion, and our last speaker talked about this as well. The Rana Plaza tragedy in Bangladesh really was a wake-up call. It really started a flood of change in the way that people view fashion and the way that people view where fashion came from. And it has made a substantial difference in some of the movements to organize labor, in some of the movements to change safety hazards and safety conditions in the garment industry all over. But what it's done in terms of the consumer is it has really forced consumers to be aware of what inexpensive, mass-produced fashion is having on the environment and the people who produce it. And when you start talking about this group of younger people who are very engaged in how am I affecting the world, this has had a dramatic impact. A study at a major university in the United States has shown us that if you change the marketing term on a product from style-centric to socially conscious, so this is the same product presented in a different way, from being about design to being about social welfare, the sales of that product increased 14%. It also found that the majority of buyers, 3/4, 75% of buyers, were willing to pay 25% more for that product. So not only can you increase the price that you can charge for a product, you will have more sales. If you are using the terms that the buyer wants to hear, they have to be true. Let's make sure, remember, we have to be transparent, we have to be honest. But for artisan work, most of this is automatically true. And that's what we want to come back to, is there's lots of this and these trends that you just have to use. You just have to take advantage of because you're already doing it. The nature of your work in working with artisan-made and handmade products, this already happens. But you have to be aware of how is it that the market wants it presented to them, and you have to present it to them in that way. Cuyana. This is a great example of the slow fashion movement. So the slow fashion movement and the motto of Cuyana is fewer, better. So I am going to have fewer pieces. I am willing to pay more money for them. I want them to be higher quality, and I want them to last longer. You can just slide over to this chair. Your chair broke. So slow fashion is about fewer products, but of a higher quality. And the younger generation is willing to do this. And this ties, again, back into our previous speaker. They're also much less label conscious. Label conscious. Yeah, we talk about brands and labels being different. So label conscious, they don't care who made it if it meets all of these other requirements. If it has the quality that matches the price and is ethically sourced and is a great design, it doesn't matter to them if it says Ferragamo on it. It doesn't matter to them if it says Dior on it. These other things are more important to them. We believe in style over trend, quality over quantity. We want you to love your closet. Believe that fewer, better things lead to a fuller, better life. So this is the slow fashion movement. Proud Mary, the same thing. Spring collection made in Mexico and the other Latin American countries. And Proud Mary, again, ties us back to the tradition, helps us understand the cost of the product. That's a big portion of why people sometimes are confused about the price of a product, is they don't know what went into it. They don't know how much time it takes to embroider a shirt, or to embroider a purse, or to weave a piece of hand-woven fabric. So it's your responsibility to teach them. It's your responsibility to show them. And Proud Mary does an excellent job of that. The fifth trend we want to look at is evergreen. This is one that has been building for a long time, and this is really about that planet positive side. The previous four have been about the people positive. This is really about the planet positive side. So we are seeing more and more a focus on honest and nature-connected materials. 81% of consumers said they would be willing to make personal sacrifices to address social, economic, and environmental issues. This is big. This is new. That people are willing to give something up for the greater good, for understanding that what happens here in Peru can affect my life in the US, for what happens in the US can affect someone's life in Japan, in terms of how we treat our world. And this is a relatively new concept, particularly at this level of consumer engagement. West Elm, again, we'll use them as an example. West Elm has really been a leader in many of these trends. As an individual producer, it would be difficult for you to address all these, but West Elm is a huge organization, and so they do have the capacity and the bandwidth to be able to address many of these effectively. So within their catalog, they actually have a glossary of terms, and then they have icons associated with different products that show you how those products tie in to the different impacts that they work on. So for instance, here you have 100% reclaimed product, so recycled, Forest Stewardship Council certified. So this is telling us that this product specifically has an environmental impact and exactly what that environmental impact means. So, and then it ties it into an experience. So here we are, remember we want to come back to experience. So you buy this table and you can plan a dinner party with the planet in mind because the table you're eating off of is made from recycled wood. But it's tying it back into having an experience. It's tying it into making a difference in the world and keeping the environment healthy. And again, more examples of that in terms of the specifics of how we're working with people. Indigo Africa. The thing that I want to show you with Indigo Africa is what we call a vertically integrated company. So they work in all channels of distribution. They have their, from producer all the way through to retail and everything in between. So their efficiency level is quite high. They get direct feedback from consumers, so they can react to that. And then they also are able to educate their producers better on how the market system works. Indigo Africa also does a tremendous amount of partnership-based marketing. They want to tie us to the women that they work with. Their focus is specifically on women. They started off with traditional baskets, and then they responded to the market by producing more contemporary versions of those baskets to expand their marketplace. And they added new materials, and they talked to you about that handmade process. Indigo Africa is a great example of how industry partnerships can be successful. They have partnered with everyone. They've partnered with large multinational corporations, they've partnered with small boutiques, but all because what they offered in terms of their impact and their design and their planet positive aspects of their business allow those partner organizations to react to consumers' demands for these marketing terms and techniques. So finally, and this is one we just added, you'll understand why. So finally, resist. Keep it up. Keep up telling the world what is right. I learned to knit so I could make those hats 3 months ago. I've now made 9. So we have to keep telling the world how we want to live. And you as producers, you as artisans, you working in the developing world are most affected by the changes. So you have to find your voice and you have to use it. And we want to hear it. Consumers want to hear it. They want to know what's happening. Because this is a generation that has grown up being connected. It's a generation that's looking for that information, that has content available to them. It's a generation that's getting out and trying to force change. We see groups like Patagonia, who did something last year that no one's ever done before. Who's heard of Black Friday? So for those of you who haven't, Black Friday is the day that the traditional day in the United States that the Christmas season starts. The reason it's called Black Friday is because so much purchasing is done that companies that have operated at a loss for 11 months suddenly turn a profit. So they go from red ink to black ink. Patagonia last year donated 100% of their global sales to grassroots nonprofits working on the front lines to protect our air, water, and soil. Unheard of. Their biggest selling day of the year, and they gave all the money away because it was important to their customer. They didn't do it just because they were nice. They did it because it was important to their customer, and the amount of additional business this got them was huge. The amount of press coverage it got them was huge. But they were also taking a stand to say, this is what we and our customers believe in. And the world heard. So, authenticity, honesty, and trust, transparency is really what this is about. Social and media savvy customers, content. How do we reach our customers when we have the world is readily available to us? So we have to create content that is relevant to the consumer. Experience versus product. How do we tie our products into an experience that allows the consumer to feel that they are a greater part of the change in the world? Ethical fashion. We want to promote using higher quality, higher price point, but less disposable product that has a more positive impact on the people who make it and on the planet from where those materials are sourced. Evergreen. We are killing our world. How do we show that our business is doing something to change that? Knowing that anything we do is interconnected to everyone, the world that everyone else lives in. And resist. Make your voice known and be part of the movement that is so important to the consumer that you're targeting. That's it. Any questions? Everybody ready? Everybody ready to do this? So we ran a little long, but I think we do have time for questions because there's not another presentation. Question here?
Por favor, sean breves en sus preguntas.
Okay.
Hola, muy interesante la exposición. Yo creo que todo el mundo conoce los aspectos sociales, ecológicos, éticos de la producción, pero creo que todavía queda un tabú. Por ejemplo, usted me podría decir en la producción de esas corbatas o en la producción de esos collares, donde interviene directamente el artesano, ¿qué porcentaje del precio final recibe? Esa es una pregunta que se recibe de muchos clientes, porque es cierto, quieren saber el ambiente social, económico en que ha sido producido, pero lo más importante, y que ahora no hay información clara sobre eso, de ninguna de las marcas, es saber cuánto exactamente recibe el productor.
Okay, so the question is, if we are asked, how do we address the percentage of sale that an artisan receives in contrast to the price that the product sells for? And I would say the percentage is not what's important. The amount that what is important is that the wage that the artisan is receiving is a fair and living wage within the community that that artisan is working. You don't have control over what happens to the price of the product after it leaves your hands. So what you do have control over, though, is understanding the communities that your artisans work in, understanding what it takes to live a successful life and to not only live but to advance. And so you have to pay a wage based on those conditions in your community. And that does require understanding that community, being in that community. And living wage is a difficult topic because it is really dependent upon an individual community. And that is an important aspect as far as if you are a business owner working with artisans. That's something that I would say you have to determine on an individual basis. But once it leaves your hands, there's not really much control you have over it. I would say you want to make sure that what you are doing is allowing your artisans, and what you are paying is allowing your artisans to not only survive, but to thrive and advance. And you have to determine that based on the individual community you're working in. Next question.
Colvin, muchas gracias por la presentación. Quería solamente mencionarte que en PromPerú, desde el año 2014, tenemos una división de comercio sostenible, un departamento que está a cargo de la señora María del Pilar Laracón, que apoya en todos los tipos de certificaciones como huella de carbono, orgánico, huella hídrica, no, responsabilidad social y todos los temas que has hablado, y realmente nos da gusto al escuchar tu presentación que estamos en sintonía de lo que está pidiendo el mercado. Tenía una pregunta sobre esto. Presentaste una empresa que se llama Cuyana. ¿Esa es una empresa americana? Porque el nombre es prácticamente una palabra quechua que significa que se deja querer. No sé de dónde es esa era la pregunta que tenía. Gracias.
I believe Cuyana is an American-owned company working in Peru, but I'm not positive about the owners. So, but it's good to know that you do have support here through Prom Peru and through the different ministries to help you determine this. But and it also to have an outside verification service that says these are the guidelines that you want to look for. I also would encourage you to look at groups like the World Fair Trade Organization. Has a list of qualities and principles that they recommend that are good guidelines. But again, they are guidelines because they will change based on the individual community. The example that I like to use, which is a dramatic example, is fair trade. When we talk about fair trade and fair labor principles, you aren't supposed to employ children under 15 in pretty much any circumstance. Swaziland is the example that I like to use. Swaziland cannot participate in the World Fair Trade Organization because 1 in 4 households in Swaziland has no parent due to the AIDS epidemic. So they have to hire children. They have to hire children head of households so that they can support their brothers and sisters who are younger than they are. So those principles and guidelines have to be adapted to an individual community. What Swaziland Fair Trade has done is you can work with children, but you cannot work with children during school hours. So the child at least has the opportunity to go to school. But they also want to make sure that those families are taken care of and that those child head of households have an opportunity to support their families. So it's very dependent upon the community and the conditions that you're working in. So one question back here.
Yo quería preguntarle acerca, volviendo al trabajo colaborativo con artesanos, ¿cómo se puede ganar la confianza de los artesanos cuando trabajas con una nueva comunidad?
Can you repeat that?
Trabajas con una nueva comunidad, ¿cómo ganarse la confianza de los artesanos?
How do you earn the trust of an indigenous artisan community. Slowly. It's very much, so I work with artisans, I work with buyers all over the world. And the number one question I get from artisans is, how do I know I'm going to get paid? The number one question I get from buyers is, how do I know I'm going to get any product? And the answer to it is by developing a relationship. And relationships develop slowly. Think about it even from the terms of our personal relationships. You know, when you first meet somebody, it's, let's go get coffee. It's just coffee. And then if coffee goes well, then maybe you go out to dinner. And if dinner goes well, then maybe you go away for the weekend. I move a little fast, apparently. But that's how it works. It develops over time. We have to learn to trust one another. And business relationships are no different. You have to learn to trust one another. And believe me, all of the concerns that you have, the artisan has as well. Because they've been through this before. They've had people come and say, oh, I'm going to sell all your product and it's going to be wonderful and you're going to have so much money and we're going to do such wonderful things together. And then nothing happens. So you have to start slow, just as any relationship. You have to start slow and build that relationship and build that trust with one another. All right, so I think that's it. Thank you so much. And good luck.
Bueno, agradecemos la ponencia del Dr. Calvin, con el cual lo despedimos con un fuerte aplauso en este escenario. Muchas gracias.
Thank you.
Al público asistente se le hace recordar que las ponencias se están transmitiendo en vivo a través de la página web www.perumoda.com. Igualmente lo pueden tener en el transcurso de los demás días. Nos encontramos nuevamente a las 3 de la tarde en este salón para la segunda parte de las ponencias del día 7 de abril. Muy agradecido con su atención.
Calvin.